Hello and welcome. This is Lisa Jones, and you are listening to the Exploring Death podcast. Hello and welcome to the Exploring Death podcast. I'm Lisa Jones, your host, and today I have with me Dr. Sharon Prentice. Soon after completing her graduate studies in psychology, Dr. Prentice found the world of secular psychology lacking. Her patients needed something more. So she set out to investigate and explore alternative methods in the field of mental health that would incorporate that something special she believed existed in each and every individual soul. Her journey would take her through the great religions of the world, as well as to a discovery of ancient time, proven alternatives to modern therapeutic models of counseling. Her patients have dubbed her practice as the crazy hot mess therapy, which opens up and wakes up the spirit. She does, however, devote extra attention to those seeking solace and understanding after the death of a loved one, as she fully acknowledges the experiences that sometimes accompany that death. Her commitment to the health and well-being of the spiritual nature of her patients has led her to being called an empath, a mind reader, a healer, a spiritual guide by all of her patients. Her highly sensitive, intuitive, and compassionate nature, her unique approach to therapy, and her truly empathic ways have engendered a loving and fiercely loyal following among her patients and her friends. You can always find her on the beach in cutoff jeans and a t-shirt, lying in a hammock, drinking pina coladas, and eating chocolate. But she will always answer their calls. Welcome, Dr. Prentice.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Lisa. I've been looking forward to this.
Me too. I am thrilled to hear about your experience because we had a similar experience, right? And that's what I want to jump right in. So why don't you go ahead and tell us what happened, how this what woke you up, shall we say?
What woke me up? This sounds ridiculous. It was death that woke me up. This started a long time ago with the death of my first daughter. I can't even begin to tell you how tragic something like that is. And I became an angry, bitter, rageful person. And I started my own vendetta against God. I had this existential revenge plan where I was going to beat death. Okay. I was going to beat death at his own game and thereby win and say to God, hey, listen, you can't take anybody else away from me. It didn't work so well. A few years later, my husband got very ill. And he actually died. And when he died, I don't know if it was his love for me that caused this or whether God intervened in his own plan for me, sort of like, okay, you can't be angry and rageful at me anymore. Let me show you. So I was invited along at the moment of my husband's death for what I call a peek into foreverness. I was taken with him. And the name of the book is Becoming Starlight. And the reason I call it Becoming Starlight is that's the only name that could have been the name for this book, because that is exactly what happened. I went into starlight, and within that starlight was this presence that I knew was God.
Wow, that is so amazing. And I love that you and I have had such a similar experience. And I've always said the same thing, that I feel almost like it was like God's dispensation or,
Yes.
A gift from the universe, because I really didn't think I could go on
Absolutely.
when he died. I had two young children, 8 and 10 when he died. And I truly believe that I don't think I could have functioned or something had I not seen this glimpse.
That's very true. We're very similar now that you said that. My son had just turned 9. His birthday was March 12th and my husband died April 8th. So he had just turned 9 years old. And even before my husband's death, I wasn't functioning well at all, because having lost my daughter and now losing him, from your experience that you just lose who you are. Your whole identity is wrapped up in these few people that make up your life. And when you lose them, you think, who am I? What am I going to do? And then, of course, you get into the spiritual part of it. Does God even know who I am? And I think that's why I was given this experience. As you know, you have no RSVP in this. You are just taken. This is not an invite you can say no to. And for me, it actually saved my life, and it altered everything about who I was and who I thought I was in the universe, who I was to God, and who I was to everyone else around me.
Oh my goodness. My whole body is absolutely, just
Well,
tingling.
you know, you were there. You experienced it too.
Well, that's what's so exciting. And that's what I've loved about talking with people that have been there, quote unquote, because once we start talking about it, I feel like it opens a portal or something that I
Yes, I swear.
can viscerally feel and remember so clearly that connection and being, as I
Yes.
called it, heaven. I mean, so what else did you visually see or how,
Well, you know, it was funny. My husband had cancer, and he was a big man. He was 6'1", 200 something pounds, and he was our Superman. You know, he was always so strong. And by the time he died, he didn't even weigh 90 pounds. And it was, you can imagine, just watching him go through all of that. And then when I went into Starlight, I know people say, you went into Starlight? Yes, I went into Starlight. And I saw him, okay? I saw him the way he was before. And he was standing right in front of me. And he was at peace and he was joyful. He was just so happy and he was smiling at me. And you know, at a time like that, people always say to me, what did you say? What did you do? You know, because you think you're going to come up with this amazing, the most amazing thing you've ever said in your life. And the only thing that came out of my mouth was, I can see you, you know. I mean, it was just, but that was the only thing because it was so real and so peaceful. And we were home. And so he was the only person that I saw. But what I felt, I've never felt before in my life or since. Just this unbelievable magnificence. A lot of people ask me, well, was it unconditional love? And I'm like, no. Unconditional love at this point in my life really doesn't mean that much to me because this was so far beyond that. You know what there's no
I know.
word. There's no word for the magnificence, just the purity that was there and the love and the compassion and the just overwhelming awe that, and it healed me and it saved me. And seeing him, knowing that he was healthy and that he was happy and he was joyful and he was home, and I knew that he was going to be with our daughter. I knew it. And just the entire experience altered my life completely and the life of my family and our community.
Oh my goodness. I seriously can't get over just the words you're using and the phrases. I mean, it's the same words that I've been using over the last 15 years. And we were just talking just before we started about how wonderful it is to connect with people because that have been there because we understand each other. I mean, you're speaking my language and it is a language that I have no words for. And that's, I think, the most difficult part is that I can't even convey or begin to convey, as you mentioned, the unconditional love, because you're right, it's far beyond that. It was so clean and bright and colors that I've never seen before, and just that feeling of oneness with everything, and yet being my own.
Oh my gosh,
right?
you said that because I had to go to the colors you're talking about. People said to me, well, did you see the white light? And I'm like, no, because it wasn't white. It was a color. I think it was a color that I've never, ever, ever experienced before. And so I can't really say it was a color, but it was just amazing. And you know, it's funny, Raymond Moody and I love the man. He's the sweetest man in the world. And he wrote the foreword for Starlight. And he and I have talked so much about our inability to come up with the words because no words have been invented to describe this unbelievable experience. Now, you called it heaven earlier. I don't call it heaven. I call it that place. And the reason I don't call it heaven, I can see from your smile, you know what's coming. When you say the word heaven, at least for me, all of the traditions that you grew up with, okay, that's what you see in your mind. You know, this physical place, and God is this physical being. You know, the Charlton Heston sitting in the throne with the long hair and the beard and all that. And that is not at all what I found. I can't even describe where I was as a physical place, and yet I knew it was. It was pure spirit, but at the same time, it was a place. That's why I call it that place. I mean, it's hard to describe.
It is hard to describe. And also I feel that what I believed heaven to be, quote unquote, was what I created, or was created for me to make me feel comfortable. Because I think if I had gone someplace, because I was raised very religiously, I was a minister's daughter. And so I think if I had gone somewhere that was way beyond my comprehension, I wouldn't have felt the peace and love, but it was everything and more than I could imagine what. But that's, I love what you said though, but even the word heaven has so much connotation around it. And so, and it turns off people, it turns on people. There's too much baggage for all the words that we have to be able to describe where we've been, because it's
indescribable.
Right. It's indescribable, and we do not have a vocabulary for it. And
it does not exist.
Right. And I think that is the difficulty when here we are trying to talk about something that's so beyond here. But
you know what I discovered? I discovered something. I want to ask you this question, because you and I are so similar in what we experience. All my life, I had been taught that God was this man, this person outside of me. Okay. And that he watched everything that you did, and he was going to throw lightning bolts at you if you said a bad word, or, anything like that. And he was so separate from me. And I think that's why I totally fell apart when my daughter died. And I just searched and searched and searched, but I had no faith anymore, because what I had believed in was totally wrong. Now, my question to you is, did you find that not only was God part of you, but you were part of him, and you couldn't tell where you ended and where he began? Did you feel that?
Absolutely. Yes. And it's
one.
Yes. And interestingly, I had an experience earlier. It wasn't the death of a loved one, but I had a crumbling of my spirituality when I was in college, and found out that my youth director at my Lutheran church had sex with all the girls in my confirmation class.
Oh, good Lord.
But not with me. And my mom called me, I remember, at the dorm saying, oh my God, did the pastor touch you? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then, but once I found out, I could put the pieces together, and he had taken me down to the basement one night, and I knew it felt weird, and my intuition kicked in and was like, time to go. So I left. But when I finally accepted that the man that taught me about the man in the sky was this, wasn't who I thought he was, I turned away from God. I thought it was all just ridiculousness. So I lost my faith at that point. But then it was when my husband died that I had, got it back. And so similar to you, that we lost it all, and then it came back with this gift.
Exactly. I tell people that death was my greatest teacher, and they look at me like I'm a nut. But it was through death that I found the value and the preciousness of life. You learn how to live when you face, most people, when you think of death, okay, most people know, but that's why I do what I do, because people are afraid to even say the word, because they have this character of this, 10-foot guy in the black hoodie robe, we're carrying the sickle. And then when I tell them that that's not death, that death is really a friend. Okay, death is really a friend. Taught me so much about living without having those experiences, and then being taken with death. I wouldn't be who I am today.
I love it. When I did my stage shows, I would come out, and one of the first things I'd say is, the best thing that ever happened to me was my husband dying, and everyone's like, oh,
sometimes like, what?
Right. I know. And then people, of course, they're like, oh my God, what do you mean? Was he a terrible guy? And it's like, no, he was the most loving, amazing man, but it woke me up to life, because before that, I had no clue. I really didn't.
I know. I work with a lot of terminally ill patients right now and their families, and I really have to watch myself, because at the moment of death, you know what my first response is? I smile. And the reason I smile is because now they know. They're there. They know now. So I kind of, I try not to smile real big, because the family sometimes looks at me like, are you seriously smiling, lady? But
right.
It's an important, sacred moment right then, because they are where you were and where you want to be again.
That's right. And once again, another similarity, I'm a hospice volunteer, and the same thing, when I go in and sit vigil with people that are within hours of their death, I just sit there feeling so bright and light and just
Yes.
beaming because I can feel that
Yes.
they're going through the veil, they're coming, they're,
Yes.
back and forth. And there's just such a beautiful reverence. I mean, to me, it's no different than being in the delivery room when a baby's being born, right? I mean, they're
Yes.
just going through the next portal to the
Yes.
next birth into
I
their.
tell people death is birth backwards.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh, we are
I
like
know this is
twin
the
sisters.
this is what it is, Let me ask you another question. I love this. I'm
Oh,
interviewing you here.
I love it too. This is great.
Do you think that the soul starts to disconnect from the physical body before the actual moment of death?
I know it does
Yes.
because yeah.
Yes.
My mother fell ill, and when I got the news, she was in the hospital, and so I packed my bags and I laid down. I had just a couple hours before a car was going to come pick me up at 3:00 in the morning, and all of a sudden her spirit just came to me, and
Yes.
it was so amazing. It was like being in that heavenly place again, but it
Yes.
was her, and
Yes.
she said, "Oh my God, you said we'd be able to connect when I went to the other side," and so I thought she had died because my only
Right.
experience before was
Yeah.
that, oh, she must have left her body. Well, I was afraid. I didn't want to call my stepdad in Hawaii. I had a 12-hour flight to get there. So anyway, it turns out when I got to the hospital, I walked in the room and she sat up, looked at me straight in the eye, and then collapsed. And that was the last time she opened her eyes, but she didn't die for another 5 days.
What a
And so
blessing for you.
it was such a blessing, but it was confusing because I was like, oh
Yes.
my God, wait, she came to me. How did she leave her body and come to me so clearly? But
I
so this is
think
new for me. So tell me your experience with that.
I have been with so many people when they've died. That's what I do as a psychologist. I was searching after my husband died for the answers to what in the world all of this was. And so I was going to be a psychiatrist, and I decided I wasn't going to be a pill popper. So I transferred over to graduate school, and I decided I'm going to work with terminally ill people. And most people think, oh, how can you do that? It was a very selfish thing because I thought, how am I going to get back to where I was? Well, if I'm around people that are dying, maybe I can hitch a ride again,
Right,
Of course, it
right.
never happened again. But I've been around so many people and watched the process of dying it's truly it's an amazing thing to watch. And that's how years ago I came to the conclusion that days before the actual event, before your body stops all physical, that the soul actually starts to leave. And that's why I tell people all the time that death itself is so calm. It's so peaceful. It is not this horrible, painful. People fear the process of death versus death, and they don't even realize it. Because I honestly believe if you watch someone going through it, you will see everything start to change. And a lot of physicians will tell you, well, that's the blood pressure and the heart and the this and the this. And, they always have to have a scientific reason for it. I think it is a very spiritual moment when your soul no longer serves, or the body, I should say, no longer serves the soul. And so it starts to connect and go home. So by the actual moment of death, it is just purely a physical thing. The soul has already left, your spirit is already home, and that will explain the visits that so many people had, like you had with your mom.
Wow.
I've
I
really
love
seen
that.
it too many times. I can't explain it scientifically, but on a spiritual level, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind.
Well, I think eventually the scientific world is going to come around, just like when we lived on the flat
Right.
Earth, right? I mean, eventually
Well,
it
they
came
have
to
to.
light that we're on a globe.
This is happening all over the world.
It is.
This isn't just you and me. This is everywhere. And people are starting to come out and say, you know what? Let me
Right.
tell you what happened. And they don't have a name for it, and they can't describe it, but we recognize it.
That's right.
You
That's
know?
right. And that's what I see more and more in with the whole death positivity movement. And
Yes.
that's partly why I started the Exploring Death podcast, is because
Mhm.
it's so exciting. And when people actually, instead of being afraid and step through the door of like, well, let me just peer in here and see, then you start realizing the benefits of really embracing death and allowing
Yes.
it, because it makes me feel so much more alive, as opposed to being just terrified and scared all the
Exactly.
time.
That's why I do what I do.
Right.
I have gone into so many homes where the person chose hospice at home instead of going to
Yes.
a facility. And I walk into the room and it's absolutely quiet. People aren't talking. People are just kind of, and the first thing I'll do is I'll go in and jack up the radio and I'll say, come on, we need to talk, because your mom, your dad, your whomever They need to know you're going to be okay because they're here. They understand what's going on. They see you. They need to know you're going to be okay. And so we get to talking about, what they did and memories and jokes and all of these wonderful things. And when you go through an experience like that and you're with the person, it makes the death, I'm going to use the word better. I know death, people don't look at death if it's better, but that lingering that you see a lot of times, people sit around and linger because they're afraid for their families.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
But if they know you're going to be okay, they know you're going to hurt. They know
Right.
you're hurt. But if they see their families are okay, then it makes it easier for them to say, okay, I'm out of here. I'm going home.
That's right.
I have
Wow.
so many times. I know you probably have too with all the people that you talk to.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and I'm curious, so what about, did you have any, gifts, or I don't even like to use the word gifts, but just an opening of your connection with spirit, or maybe, so tell me about that.
Doesn't it sound funny when we talk this way because
I
people look at you sometimes like, ooh, but it's really not the woo-woo stuff. I can't, I'm going to say I came back, okay? But as you know, a shared death experience, we're not dead, we're not dying, we're just taken along. But you are changed. You cannot go through an experience like that and not be changed. And when I came back, it was with such an intuition that is so incredibly strong that sometimes I intimidate people. People don't want to meet my eyes because I see things that they don't want me to see. And we all have these shadows that we hide in our souls, whether they're ours or ones that people put on us that don't belong to us. And we don't want to look at them. And so when someone looks at you and they can see those shadows and they try to shine light on them, which is what I just do, okay, it can be very intimidating. People cry, people yell, people scream at me. They do all kinds of things because they don't want me to see. I never had that before. So I have just this empathic ability now. That's why people say that it's crazy hot mess therapy. Okay, I did not give myself that moniker. My patients gave it to me because I'm a board certified spiritual counselor, but I'm also board certified in marriage and family counseling, in individual and group, in adolescent and child, in abuse and emergency type counseling, and in behavior modification. And the reason I got board certified in all of them was because when someone sits in front of me, it's the whole deal, okay? I'm not gonna go to just one thing. So all of my patients have said to me at one time or another, you're gonna make me into a crazy hot mess. So I have hats and t-shirts and plaques and things like that all over my office that people give me because you are making me a crazy hot mess. You cannot, and you know this, having do what you do and having had the experience that you have, you cannot be healthy unless you're physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual are all in balance. If one of them goes down, the entire system crashes. And most often it's the spiritual that people struggle with the most. That's why I became a board certified spiritual counselor. And I just dragged that out. And when you drag that out, you hit absolutely everything. And I've only really been able to do that because of the experience I had, because I can see it. Can you see the pain in people now? That's
Yes.
I can see it.
Right.
One of the reasons when we go places, I don't tell people what I do unless they already know, because it turns into this, people either run from me or they come up and I know their life story in 5 minutes. I never before. So that to me was an incredible gift that I have turned around and used with the people, my patients and the terminally ill and their families, to get them through that kind of a grief process. We can never take away the fear. You and I have experienced something that is such an amazing blessing, okay? And we can never take away all the fear, the fear that somebody feels of death and dying or losing their family, but we can help. And
yes. Yes. And I think for me, what I don't see the shadow as much in people, but I feel that they can see the light that's coming through, because I'll be sitting just randomly somewhere and the next thing I know, somebody comes and they just spill their entire life story right in front of me. Right.
Yes, all the time.
Right. And they're like, I don't know why I'm telling you this, and I'm like, I do.
Abilities. We came back with the same ability.
Right.
Only you can see all the light and I see the parts that need to come out.
Yes.
So that the light can take over.
Right.
Yes,
Right. Wow. I love that. I love
I
that.
do too.
Oh my goodness. Well, listen, I do a little reading for my interviewees. Would you
Yes,
like
I
me to
look
do?
forward to that. Good.
Okay. Yes. Let me pull some cards.
Do I want to know this?
Oh yes. It's all good. I'm all about the light.
Yes, good.
Okay. So the first card is always the blockage card. And so the card that came up for you is compassion.
Okay.
And what I'm getting for that is, most of the time when this card comes up, and I feel like it's the same for you, it's like you're doing so much for so many, and it's like to take time and have compassion for yourself.
Oh
And
boy,
to
that's a big
really,
one for me.
right? Yeah,
That's a big
because
one for me. Yes.
because you're always doing for everyone else, and because you can see. That's, I think that's as much as it's a gift to be able to see and to bring the darkness, or where the light
Causes
needs to
problems
shine.
too.
It's right. It creates a lot of chaos and confusion and havoc. I mean, this is what's coming through to me to mention to you. And so it's about you taking care of yourself, and just really loving yourself up and knowing what good you're doing and not questioning, because so many times
So
people,
funny. That's so
right?
funny because it's so true. Oh my gosh.
Right, right. Because sometimes what's coming through again is that you're taking it personally what people are saying when it
I
has really
do.
nothing to do with you. You're
I
just the
do.
conduit, right?
I do. My husband's
Yes.
now, I remarried. My husband now says to me, you need to leave this stuff home. I mean, at the
At work.
office, you don't take this on as your own because that's what I do.
Right,
So
right.
sometimes I just get all over myself for doing that, but I can't let it go.
Absolutely.
And sometimes
Absolutely.
it makes me sob because there's so much pain out there and I want to fix it all.
Right,
Yeah, you're
right.
right. Oh, you're so right. I don't know that I want to see the next one.
Well,
So,
the next one's good. I'm telling, it's all good. You're going to get some help. So this is your action card, which is
oh,
enthusiasm, which
okay.
which you have enthusiasm for your work, which is fantastic. But what you need to focus on is enthusiasm for yourself and for the light that you shine, within yourself and for your family. And just like your husband said, leave it at the office and really take the time, because guess what? Your outcome card, I've got absolute chills here, is voyage, to go on a trip and to really, take, just like take this all in what you do, but leave that behind and just go and
Oh,
explore for
that's so hard to
yourself.
do. Oh, that's so hard to do. That is so hard to do. Oh my
But what they're saying too is that the more that you're able to, it's almost like, they're saying the word dissection. It's like by dissecting it between your work life and then your home life, you'll feel so much more whole and complete, because right now you're bleeding through both sides. Does that feel right?
yes, it does. It does. My whole family says that to me. Matter of fact, this last weekend, two of your words that you just used. The first one, enthusiasm. Do you know who Paul Perry is?
No.
Okay, Paul does a lot of writing with Raymond, and he's
Okay.
an award-winning documentarian, the whole thing. He sent me an email just the other day. He's got a new documentary out that is fantastic. He sent me an email the other day that said, your enthusiasm is about to just bowl me over. So when you said enthusiasm, I'm going, oh my God. And then my son, we were all thinking about where we were going to go. Were we going to take a cruise? Or were we going to go to New York? I mean, what are we going to do, over Christmas? And my son said, but I'm not going anywhere with you if you don't leave the stuff behind, because I look at you and I see them. And when you're talking to me, you're talking about them. So, oh my gosh, you are like right there.
Wow, that is, yeah, you can't get much closer than that. So fantastic. Well, I hope you take it to heart, because it really will. I mean,
I
Spirit's
will.
telling me it will really help, not only in your personal life to make you feel more whole and complete, but also in your professional life to be able to, just have a real delineation between,
Right.
when you're working, and
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 that's
and
so
and,
true.
and all you need to do is ask Spirit to help you. Like, it's like an on and off switch.
Right.
You can
Right.
just turn it off when you don't need it, and then go into the office and turn it on, and it's
Yeah,
it's
I
gonna.
do that. I ask all the time and then I ignore what they say.
Oh, right.
I need to learn to listen.
Yes, yes. Well, that's so funny. So, what else would you like to talk about or share with the listeners about death, and any tips on how people can, kind of embrace the idea of either their death or somebody that they're losing?
You know, that is such a difficult question. And I think the reason it's so difficult is, like we said earlier, the fear factor. Okay. We all have this thing that have put in our head about death is so painful and death is so horrible and death is so black. When I get people in my office, I don't let them out until I find the shadows, which we talked about earlier, because most of the time they don't belong to them. It's these things that people have put on us from the time we were born. And there's so much fear in there and so much having to live up to these expectations, and they don't belong to you. So getting back to who you are helps you find your place in the universe, helps you find your place with God, helps you understand that God knows your name. He knows your name and how much you are loved. And so whether that is, I always give everybody homework. So whether it's meditation, and meditation can be prayer, meditation can be sitting very still and taking these shadows in your life and making this big black cloud, in the middle of the room, which is really in the middle of your head. And then staying there and finding the person or the things that cause you so much pain, and then lifting yourself out of that into the light, okay? That helps alleviate some of the fear, because death and fear in our culture go together when really it should be death and the love of God. And when you find that again and you find your faith, and it doesn't matter what faith you are in this, that, but when you find that faith again, you find who you are to God, and where God is, fear cannot exist. So that's kind of what I do with people. I help them find that spot that they don't want to touch. And they don't
Right.
and
Right.
once we find that and we see it, it makes my job so much easier.
It makes it so much easier. So that leads me to one other question, which is, what about those that don't believe in anything beyond here? Like they think when we die, we just go into the dirt and boom, we're done. Any thoughts?
It's really funny because I have worked with some families who declared themselves as atheists or agnostics. And it's really funny, that doesn't last very long, because inside all of us, there is a spiritual nature just begging to get out. It's there. And trying to reach that, once again, involves going to what I call the underside of your soul, okay? Because that's where all the pain is hidden. And getting to that underside of your soul, it's there. So they can tell me they don't believe. They can tell me, they show me. Well, number one, I share starlight with them, so I show them as much as I can. And number two, all I have to do is shine a little tiny bit of light into that underside of your soul, and bam, it just comes out. And it's amazing to watch the transformation. Sometimes they don't want to admit it. You see it in their eyes. It's there. So that has been my experience with them. I have never in all these years run into someone who has basically never admitted that they have a spiritual side. And once they admit they have that spiritual side, you got them.
Right. I love it.
You got them.
Well, and I always say, well, I guess you'll find out, once you cross over, because I have zero doubt after my experience. Of course. I mean, how could there not be? So,
right. And I have had people ask me about the judgment, they're afraid. That's another part of dying, with the fear. And I tell them, and this gets me in trouble with a lot of people who believe in the, you're going to hell judgment type stuff. Did you find any judgment at all, Lisa?
No, none at all. But that was my biggest fear. My husband wasn't baptized, so I was frantic. I literally thought he was going to hell because that was what I believed, and I was 37 years old when this happened. And then to see him being welcomed in, and then the first thing the next morning that happened is he came and started talking to me and said, "Oh my God, Lisa, I love you, but it's so awesome here." So
there's no judgment. And that's what
no judgment.
And
none.
then of course you get in the debate with the Hitlers and the this and all
right.
This. My response to that always is, you know what? God did not feel it necessary to explain to me his overall plan for the entire universe. Okay. He intervened in his plan for me, and that's enough. So I don't get in those types of debates with people, but what I will tell them was that the goodness and the graciousness and the love and the magnificence was so overpoweringly compassionate and lovely and love. How can there be judgment in that?
Right. Absolutely. None.
Yeah. So It was, quite an experience. I'm so glad to talk to somebody who has had the shared death experience.
Yes.
People I know have had the near-death experience. Although I don't know if you've heard about the research study that's going on at the University of Santa Barbara, the Crossing Over
Yes.
Project. That is going to be fascinating.
Absolutely. And in fact, I've got William Peters scheduled to interview with him. In fact, I was supposed to interview him yesterday, but he had a cancellation. So we're going to reschedule, but I'm fascinated by it.
He's great. You're going to love him. I talked to them, a couple months back.
Oh, wonderful.
The whole everything. And they are fascinating. And the research they're doing is just going to blow the doors off of this type of research. So
absolutely.
It's very, very needed, because so many people have had these experiences and they don't know what they are. And to be told you're crazy, you don't know what you're talking about, and to be put on medications, which is what has happened to a lot of people. And it just so diminishes the unbelievable blessing and magnificence of what we were given.
Absolutely. Wow.
Talk about it. So their study is going to be one of the most worthwhile research projects out there.
Absolutely. Well, you are such a blessing, and thank you so much for spending this time with me and sharing your amazing experience. And
this
just
has been great. I love it. This is
what
great.
an amazing gift you are to this world, and you sharing your light with everyone. So thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been great. Let's do it again.
Okay. Yeah, I know. We could talk for hours.
I know. This is great.
Thank you for listening to the Exploring Death podcast. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Before you make any financial or legal decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Exploring Death. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.